So I'm just going to sit here, if that's okay. I don't have a PowerPoint, and I don't have Oreos, so I apologize on both counts. But I am super excited to be here with all of you today and with this great panel to talk about these very important issues. And as Jim said, I am here with the National Military Family Association. I know Nina and Patty know the National Military Family Association. Has anyone else heard of our association? Oh, yeah, yay! So you all know that we are the leading national nonprofit advocating on behalf of military families. And we work on behalf of military families from all 7 uniformed services, all ranks and components. So that's currently serving, Guard and Reserve, retired, as well as wounded service members, their families, caregivers, and survivors. We offer a lot of wonderful programs. Many of you may have heard of our Operation Purple Camp programs for military kids and families. We offer spouse scholarship programs to encourage and help and support military spouses as they pursue their careers and finish their educations. But at our heart, we are all about advocating for and fighting for military families. And that is how we came into being. We were founded 45 years ago by a group of military wives who were concerned about one of their friends who had recently been widowed, and she was destitute. There were no programs back then to support military family members who had lost their service member. And those women, they knew that was wrong, that the nation had owed these families some support because they had served and sacrificed as well. And so these women, back in 1969, they went to Capitol Hill and they talked to members of Congress and they worked, and ultimately what we now know as the Survivor Benefit Plan was passed, and that was our first legislative achievement. And for the past 45 years, we have worked and fought and advocated for the programs and services that military families need and deserve, because we feel that if service members know that their families are taken care of, that's what allows them to do the job that we as a nation are asking them to do. So we are all about taking care of military families and making sure that the nation recognizes and respects their service. So we have also recognized the disastrous impact that sequestration is having on our national defense. And actually, in a lot of ways, we were at the forefront of that issue. Last fall, we had a Storm the Hill event, where we took pictures and stories that military families had sent to us about how their communities were being affected by the furloughs and the cuts and the commissary closures that we all experienced last summer. We compiled those pictures and stories into a book that we took to Capitol Hill and we delivered to every member of Congress, just to let them know that this is having an effect now on military families and will continue to have an effect on military families. And we have continuously and repeatedly asked Congress to end sequestration. So we do recognize that that is a serious, significant issue. But having said that, we recognize that the Pentagon budget planners were put in a very, very difficult situation, but the choices they did make, as reflected in the budget proposal that Anthony talked about, will have, if they're enacted into law, they will have a significant negative impact on military family paychecks, their take-home pay. And we think that it's important to recognize that and to let you know that and to let Congress know how those choices in the President's budget proposal would have a real-life impact on military families. Anthony talked a little bit about the caps on the pay increase, the reductions in BAH. Christine's going to talk about the plans for a consolidated TRICARE program, and all of those are going to cost military families money. But the biggest single impact on military families' take-home pay would be the proposed cut to the commissary funding. That takes money immediately out of your wallet, right, if you lose the savings that you get at the commissary, but cutting the commissary funding potentially has long-term impacts on MWR programs as well, so I'll get to that in a minute. So, but I have to ask a question first. I'm an active duty Navy spouse, so I know the commissary real well. And who here loves going to the commissary? You see, I think that's awesome. I do not love going to the commissary all the time because, you know what, I have to drive to the base. I live up in Northern Virginia. I have to drive to Fort Belvoir. When I lived here, I had to drive all the way to NOB. It's always crowded. It's not that convenient, but I do. Who goes to the commissary? Yes, I'll raise my hand. I go to the commissary, and the reason is because of the savings. The Defense Commissary Agency has done studies, and they show that military families who shop at the commissary save an average of 30% over stores out in town, and that is true even if you include big box stores like Walmart and Costco. Never mind Safeway or my Publix that I loved back in Jacksonville. So we all know that we save money shopping at the commissary. We've all done the comparisons ourselves, but in order to understand why and how we save so much and why the Pentagon's budget proposal is so damaging, I think it's important to understand a little bit about how the military resale system, AKA the commissary, works. Almost everything having to do with commissary operations is mandated by law. The commissary is, by law, is supposed to sell groceries at cost. The 5% surcharge, which we all know about, goes toward renovation and construction of new commissaries. So the way the commissary is able to sell items at cost is that it receives annual funding from the federal government in the neighborhood of about $1.4 billion every year. And by the way, we think that is an excellent investment. That is money very well spent, because for every dollar that the federal government puts toward the commissary, military families see $2.08 in savings. That's the most recent data. So it's hard to imagine. Wow, that's yay for savings, yay. So it's hard to think of any other program that would get that kind of bang for the Pentagon's buck, right? So, but in the FY15 budget proposal that Anthony talked about, they are proposing slashing $1 billion from the commissary funding over the next 3 years. So commissaries overseas and in remote locations would continue to receive funding from the federal government, although they would almost certainly be affected by this proposal as well, as we can talk about in a minute. But commissaries, the vast majority of commissaries in the United States would not receive any funding at the end of 3 years under this proposal. So what would have to happen is laws would have to be written to allow the commissary to charge higher prices to sell items at a profit so that they would have funds to operate the commissary. They might potentially also have to change the law to cover what the commissaries are allowed to sell. Right now, you don't buy beer and wine, for example, at the commissary. So there are proposals that would, let's let the commissary expand the range of items that they're allowed to sell so that they can generate more revenue. Okay, so the Defense Department estimates that under this proposal, the commissary could still offer some savings to patrons in the neighborhood of maybe 10%, because they would still be able to operate on the installations rent-free. But let's look at this a little bit more closely. Okay, so let's just take the proposal on its face and say that the commissary could continue operating and that they would have to raise prices, and so that is an immediate cut, effectively, to military family pay. The Defense Commissary Agency estimates that a family of 4 that does all their shopping at the commissary saves $4,500 a year. Even somebody like me, who I've been known to run out to Safeway for a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread now and then, even somebody like me, my family of 4, we save about $3,600 a year. So you can see that if those savings go away, that's effectively money coming right out of my wallet. That's, at best case scenario, that's another $2,000 a year that I'm having to spend on the exact same groceries that I'm buying now. But let's think this through. Let's say that this plan goes through and commissary prices rise, even if it's a 10% savings. Realistically, are people still going to continue to shop at the commissary? A lot of us probably won't. It's an effort, as I said before. It's an effort to go to the commissary. We go because of the savings. If the savings aren't there or are significantly less, then a lot of us won't go. That's just the reality. And so what we're concerned about is the Pentagon has been very careful to say that they are not closing any stores under this plan. However, they concede that if people don't shop at the commissary, they might not be able to generate enough revenue to keep going, and so some commissaries might have to close. So then not only have I lost the 80% of the savings that I used to see at the commissary, well, now I've lost all the savings that I used to see at the commissary. The other thing that you have to know is that the commissary system benefits from economies of scale, meaning that the commissary can buy food from its suppliers at a very low cost because of the revenue, because of the volume, because of the turnover. So if fewer people are shopping at the commissary, if those sales are down, they don't have as much leverage with their suppliers, and so those suppliers are going to have to charge higher prices. So even though the commissaries overseas and in remote areas are still going to continue to get funding, well, if they can't buy those products as cheaply as they used to, they're going to see prices in those commissaries go up as well. So it's going to be a price increase for military families regardless of where you live. And the other piece of this is the exchange. Now, the exchange operates on a different model. It does sell items for profit. It's self-supporting, and the profits that it generates go into our MWR programs. MWR programs like child and youth programs, like fitness facilities, like single sailor programs, like the gym and the golf course, and all these other great programs that we enjoy and take advantage of through MWR. So part of our concern also is, okay, so if people are not going to the base to shop at the commissary, a lot of the sales of the exchange are also likely to go down because studies show that a lot of the traffic to the exchange is driven by people who are going to the commissary. So people don't go to the commissary, they don't go to the exchange. Exchange revenues go down, that's fewer dollars going into our MWR programs. So what that means is some of those programs would either have to go away or they'd have to charge more to provide those same services. So that's really hitting military families. It's a 1-2 punch, isn't it? You've already lost your commissary savings, and now perhaps potentially you're looking at either paying more or losing altogether some of the great services on the installation that we're able to get through MWR. So I would say that this is just a proposal in the President's budget. We have heard from many people, many congressmen and senators, great opposition to this plan. They understand the value of the benefit to military families, and we are very optimistic that this proposal in its current form won't be put into law. However, I think it's important for military families, for you, to know that this proposal is out there because it's very important for Congress to hear your voices, for them to know what programs and services and benefits are valuable to you. We feel like, our association feels like the commissary benefit is a very important part of military compensation. It's a dollars and cents. It's something that you see in your pocketbook every time you go to the store. So, yes?
Just a real quick point. It's also calculated into your pay. So if they remove this benefit, they're not going to reimburse you. In other words, we used to get a statement that said, well, we're counting housing as this much of your pay. We're counting on you using the commissary, so we're not going to give you this amount of money. And so if you take away that benefit, but don't add that 30% that they're calculating.
Right. And there's,
so it's a triple robbery.
Right. And there's no proposal to compensate military families that I'm aware of in any way, shape, or form for that loss. So, our website is www.militaryfamily.org, and there's information on that website about contacting your congressman and senator. And I will say that I know that those stories really resonate with congressmen and senators, hearing from individual military families. And we've also had seen a lot of success with social media campaigns, working through Facebook and Twitter, and so there are lots and lots of ways to make your voices heard, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody afterwards about different ways to make your voice heard and how to get your congressman and senator to listen, because they do want to listen to you. So thank you so much, Jim. I guess Christine?